In this exercise, I want you to create a function called countTruthy, which takes an array and returns the number of truthy elements in this array. Now, what are these truthy or falsy values? Let me quickly refresh your memory. Sometimes when we have an if statement, we might pass a Boolean true or false as the condition here. For example, we might have a constant called isActive. We set this to true. And when we use this constant as the condition here, we get this hello message on the console because this is a Boolean true. But sometimes what we have in our if statement is not necessarily a Boolean value. It could be a string, it could be a number, it could be an object. So the JavaScript engine tries to convert that value to something that is like a Boolean, but it's not a Boolean. Here's an example. Let's say I have a constant called name. I set this to this string, mosh. Now, if I pass name here, obviously name is a string. It's not a Boolean true or false. So the JavaScript engine tries to interpret this as truthy or falsy. So when we run this code, you can see we still see the hello message because we're dealing with a string of characters. So this is what we call a truthy value. It's not the Boolean true, it's truthy. In contrast, if we had an empty string, JavaScript engine would see this as falsy. Again, it's not the Boolean false, it's falsy. Now, when we run this code, we no longer see the hello message. So that's all about truthy and falsy values. Now, let's quickly review the list of falsy values in JavaScript. So, undefined, null, empty string, the Boolean false, 0, and not a number. You learned about this value in an earlier exercise. That's something that I forgot to mention when I talked about all the falsy values in JavaScript, but this is the complete list of falsy values in JavaScript. So now your job is to create a function called countTruthy that gets an array and returns the number of truthy values in this array. So here's an example. If I declare this array and set it to 1, 2, 3, so here we have 3 truthy values. We call countTruthy, pass this array, and immediately pass the result to console.log. Now save the changes, so we get 3 here. Now if we add 0 here, because 0 is a falsy value, we still get 3. If we add null, undefined, and empty string, we still get 3. If I remove one of these numbers, let's say 1, we get 2. So go ahead, do this exercise, and when you're done, come back, continue watching. All right, to count the number of truthy values, first I'm going to declare a variable called count and initialize it to 0. Now we need to use a for of loop to iterate this array. And for each element, we need to check to see if that element is truthy or not. If it's truthy, we're going to increment count. So for let value of array. Now, if this value is truthy, we simply increment count. And finally, we return this count. That's all the code you had to write. So note that here, I'm not comparing this value with all those falsy values. In other words, I didn't write code like this. If value is not false or value is not undefined, this is a very poor way of writing this code. We don't want to have 5 conditions here for every falsy value. We simply pass that value here. Now that value might be a Boolean or a non-Boolean. If it's not a Boolean, the JavaScript engine tries to interpret it as truthy or falsy. So if the result is truthy, then count will be incremented. As simple as that.